Okay guys, today I have a tier list on the best to worst tech options in White Forest. The only things I'll be intentionally excluding are the Delta of Invitation stuff and the Fiendsmith stuff because they both require large packages and different playstyles. Alright, so let's begin with the most basic one. This is a Stellar. This is a card that was played mandatorily when the deck first came out, and now it's a meta call because in a heavy Charmy format, your opponent is unlikely to have the low impact hand traps that obliterate this card like Imperm Ash Veiler, so it's more likely to resolve, but also it gives you a game plan under Perulia. We naturally don't lose to Meows. We have ways around Foolos because we can just go for the Diabels into Vengeance, but this allows us to go +0 for our opponent, so they draw 1 when we normal summon this off the Perulia, and then we summon from deck and do our extra deck ladder that way. So this card is situationally a very good card, but the moment the meta or your locals environment or wherever is playing low impact hand traps, this goes back to being an extremely poor starter that gives you very minimal extension options afterwards. Herald the Arclight is a card that when you are dark locked, if you have drawn an extender, it is realistic to make this very early before summon 5 for anti-Niblines, and so for that specific reason, you could consider playing this card, but otherwise I think it's not necessary and it's a little bit too situational, but I will place it in this category just because it fulfills a very specific type of function, which is the anti-Nib play that also happens to be an Omni-Negate and a Floodgate. For Aphis, I feel like this card requires a little bit too much setup to be a great card. So this card is a really high ceiling card, but it does require setup to be able to use, and I feel like they're just better options like Woes for your ceiling card, especially post side. You don't really need to play a card like this, so I feel like there is some merit for it and there's an argument for playing it, but it's just not worth, the ceiling is not worth the investment required when you have other cards that I think just fill the spot a little bit better. Berfomit is a card that is great for beating the Darklock because this is a wind monster, and when you need 2 level 6 fiends to go into Wave Hiking Caesar when you're Darklocked, you can instead just build your combo from the start not to lose to the Darklock, because obviously you can't make Necroquip with the Fiendsmith line because the Necroquip is a dark even though all the Fiendsmith stuff is light. So this card is situationally very good if your goal is to make Wave Hiking Caesar but you are on the Fiendsmith stuff. Azumina is a card that I think is basically just not a good card. So this card has a pretty strong kaiju type effect where you contribute a Saint Azumina you control and a face-up monster your opponent controls, but if you're able to make Saint Azumina to start with, I feel like you're probably in a pretty good position if you've gotten that far, because Saint Azumina is not that easy to make playing into a board, and this is only really relevant playing into a board, so I think this card is generally not worth playing. Betrayal, I think, is probably, it's between like an A and a B, I think. So this card, maybe this sits at the top of the B tier. This one can send a Diabell star monster from your hand or a face-up field to the graveyard, which will trigger your Black Witch out of turn, target a face-up card on the field, negate its effects. So this is a very strong type of negation, would be pretty good in a breaker type format, or when a specific type of face-up card on the field needs to be activated. The other effect where you can banish it from the graveyard to negate your opponent's card or effect that was used in response to your Diabell Star monster effect or Sinful Spoil spell or trap effect is decent, but I think it's better that this is just a trap in grave, so you have another way to make your vengeance live, especially if it was cleared the first time. So I feel like this card is okay, and there's an argument for playing it, but it's not better than the best things. It's not as flexible as the best things. Beware is probably the worst card in the entire archetype that I've ever seen in my entire life, and there's no reason to ever play this card. The requirements are simply too great. Chaos Angel is only not in S tier because I feel like this card doesn't come up nearly as often as it used to now that you have so many actually good flex options like Poplar, Vengeance Dragon, etc. But there's very little reason to cut this card unless you have run out of flex spots and you have a very specific game plan in mind. But otherwise, I feel like this card is borderline S tier because it's so solid, and there are very few things that compare to it. It also turns your used bodies like a Sol and some other level 4 light monster into something useful when you don't have another good thing to do with them. Cheng Ying is a card that I feel like could be situationally good at some point, but it's a little bit too hard to gain value off of the effect. Why can't I do this? So Cheng Ying, this card has a very strong non-targeting banish effect where if this, sorry, wait, where is it? So, if a card is banished, except during the damage step, you can banish 1 card each from both your opponent's field and graveyard. So this non-targeting banish is extraordinarily powerful. But usually in your typical White Forest setup, you need to either banish a wanted to trigger this, which is very good on the crackback, but you can't do it out of turn, or you have to banish like a Black Goat Laughs or some other type of banish effect from the graveyard out of turn to trigger this. And I think it's a little bit too difficult for this to be worth it because you can't trigger it easily out of turn. You can trigger it easily in your own turn, but then you have other options like Chaos Angel that's a 10 that you would probably rather make instead. So this card is good, but I think it's just so much worse than the other alternatives that it's not worth playing. Guardian Chimera is a card that I think is probably, in any version that is playing Sinful Spoils of the White Forest, it's probably a very good card. Actually, I'm going to put Baphomet in the top here just because Wayfi King is so good. The Chimera is probably a card that you have to play, otherwise you have to make Sol. And I think this card is generally good. You can chain block it if you're making it with Black Witch out of turn, because you can go chainlink 1 Guardian Chimera so they can't ash it, chainlink 2 Black Witch. So I feel like this card is pretty good. It's a normal type of the part of the game plan. Actually, I'm going to put this in A tier probably, just because almost every single list plays Sinful Spoils of the White Forest, so this is really not super situational. And these tiers are basically the same, except if you are in situational, I guess you're just like a little bit worse than this one, but the actual power level, flexibility, whatever is the same, just more situational. Okay, Chicken Game is a card that I'm actually pairing with Set Rotation. So Set Rotation is one of the best cards in the entire White Forest deck, because in your opponent's turn 0, your turn 1, this will place a card on your opponent's field for Vengeance to be able to pop and then continue laddering. So this is like getting a free whatever summon. It could be Poplar into Doom Dragon into Vengeance Dragon, so you have one additional boss monster just because they have a card on field. This is kind of like when you want your opponent to nib you so you can Vengeance pop the nib and do the same thing. So Set Rotation is really like a god card in this deck, and it's one of the few S tier cards in my opinion. Chicken Game is an okay card. If you were playing Set Rotation and you're not on Delta, so you need another target, this is a good card to play for it. It has very good synergy with the deck, gives you a draw, which is fine. It's a free send, which is fine. If you reset it to get another draw because it's not once per turn, it's fine, but it's not like super impressive or anything. It's just like an okay card. You just would have to play it with Set Rotation if you don't have another good field spell. Chorozo is a card that I feel like is actually not a good card. It's just that you don't have anything else to do in certain hands where all you have is Wanted or Witch, and you could full combo if your opponent doesn't stop you, but usually they will stop you. So the chance of you both opening just like a Witch Wanted play and also your opponent can't stop you is very, very low. But I don't want to put this card any lower just because you don't have a better thing to do in most cases, so I feel like this maybe goes at the bottom of B tier. Okay, Crimson Dragon is similar to Chorozo in the sense that this is not going to actually resolve most of the time, and I feel like this is generally win more, but this is when you want to make a Synchro 12 play, which either happens realistically if you Vengeance pop an opponent's card on your turn 1, so their turn 0, or you're winning anyhow, and so you're going to go for a win more play that makes Blazar. But because it's win more, I feel like I wouldn't put it in a higher tier because you just don't need it. Debtors, I think, is situationally a very strong card. This is for either when you are Darklocked or you're on like a heavy Azamina build, and then you can summon the Azamina stuff out of turn. The reason that I don't like it, there are two reasons. This card is both an engine requirement, so you don't want to draw it, it's basically a brick, and also it doesn't help you play through stuff because you can't do the fusion on your turn if you are Darklocked. But the effect to banish from grave and bring one back is pretty decent to rotate your Ilia Sylvia, so I can't really say this card is bad, but I don't want to put it in the actual A tier or S tier. So this one is Determination. This one is this one. So this one is a trap card. Reveal an Azamina fusion monster in your extra deck, and for every 4 levels it has round down, shuffle a Sinful Spoils card from your graveyard and or banishment into the deck, then special summon the revealed monster, which is a fusion summon. It also has a grave effect where you can banish it to target a Sinful Spoils for trap in your grave and set it, but you can't use it this turn. I feel like this is just not flexible enough, and it's a trap card, so I don't feel like there's much reason to play this card. The actual fusion effect is very good, but I'm probably going to put it here unless someone can give you an idea of like a really good use case for this. Deck Devastation Virus is easily one of the best cards that you can play for your side deck. So this card, you tribute a dark monster with 2,000 or more attack. That's very easy. Black Witch or Vengeance. Usually look at your opponent's hand, all monsters they control, all cards they draw until the end of their 3rd turn. After this card resolves, destroy all those monsters with 1,500 or less attack. So this is a super ultra giga floodgate. It doesn't have the widest coverage, which is why I'm putting it in situational, but it is an extremely strong card when it is good. Doom Dragon is a card that I'm going to put in A tier along with Poplar. So this might be a little bit controversial because you do not need these cards. These cards are simply not part of the mandatory game plan. You only really have like 5 cards in White Forest that are mandatory for the loop. There's Diabell Queen, there's Silvera, there's Arciela, there's Ilia Sylvia, and there's Murcielago. These cards are all optional additions, but in the pure version where you're not tight on space, these cards just work so well with each other and the rest of your deck that there's no reason not to play them unless, again, there's another game plan you are introducing into the deck and you don't have space for it. This being premium removal in the Doom Dragon, and Poplar enabling Doom Dragon and also being an out-of-play quick sync means these cards are flexible enough you can do almost anything you want with them, and I would never not play them in the pure version, even though they're not mandatory. I think I also want to put Execute Dragon there too, because it's a great form of removal, but again, it's not necessary for the deck, and it's not like a god card. If you could use the Execute Dragon's effect every single turn, I probably would put this in S tier, but because you can't, then I think I'm put it a little bit below S tier. Maybe I'll put this, Maybe I'll do this. Okay, Black Goat Laughs I think is borderline S tier with Foolish Burial Goods. The only reason that I would not put it in S tier, where's Foolish Burial Goods? So this goes straight into S tier, actually the very top. So this card is the most flexible card in the entire deck. You can either dump Curse to get Philia for Diabells into Vengeance, so it's its own Diabell engine. You can dump Goat if you already have access to those, regardless of if you go first or second, and post side, you can dump Dragon's Mind, so you have additional flexibility with Goods. Goods is, I think, the best card by far, and the only reason you don't play it is if there's some other game plan you're trying to fit and you don't have space. But I think this card is truly one of the god cards of the deck. Black Goat Laughs is great because we often have like a discard outlet for it. Maybe I'll put this closer towards the top of A tier. And Dragon's Mind, this is a side deck card. I'm not distinguishing between main and side deck cards, but this card is excellent because if you draw it, you can use it as fodder and you reset it for free by paying 2,500, and you can also dump it off of Burial Goods. However, I don't think it's as good as Set Rotation because this enables our turn 1 Vengeance on their turn 0. Gallant Granite is a card that I think is pretty good situationally. So if you were playing Rusia or some other way to make a level 4, being able to search Nib and Valor is one of the most reliable protected layers you can have in all of Yu-Gi-Oh! Because your opponent can't touch your hand. So being able to have a Nib Valor in hand, even though they're aware of it, they're most likely to make mistakes, not be able to play through it, and even with 1 or 2 boss monsters, playing through a Nib Valor is just not really doable. So this card I think is an excellent card, but it doesn't really fit into every single deck because you do need another level 4 to be able to make it. Okay, so now, what was this one called again? Guilt? Yeah, Guilt of the Sinful Spoils. If your opponent special summons a monster from the deck or extra deck, and you control a Diabell Star Monster card, you can target a card your opponent controls, a monster your opponent controls, shuffle it into the deck. Then during the damage step, when your Diabell Star Monster battles an opponent's monster, you can banish this card from your graveyard. That opponent's monster's attack becomes halved until the end of the turn. I don't think the banish effect from the grave is particularly good. The on-field effect is a very, very good form of removal because it shuffles into the deck. So I feel like you could argue for this in your side deck, but I don't think it's as flexible as a lot of other cards, and so I think this probably sits pretty decently high up in B tier. The Horus engine is the only engine I'm including in this list because it's kind of compact. You just have to play like a Zombie Vampire and maybe like a Photon Lord is the bare minimum. So Zombie Vampire to dig for engine, Photon Lord to protect your plays. This card I feel like is pretty good. It's probably underrated, but the problem is that Happy is a brick and King Sarcophagus is technically not a brick, but it's like Deception, and then it trades extremely poorly with interactions. So you could play this engine, especially if you're missing cards. It's not mandatory. I don't think it's bad, but it's not great. Okay, Iris Sword Soul is probably my favorite card after Totally Awesome in all of Yu-Gi-Oh! This is a Sword Soul card. So this card says, during the main phase, if a monster whose effects is negated is on the field, quick effect, you can special summon this card from your hand. If your opponent special summons a monster, except during the damage step, you can activate one of these effects based on where it was summoned from. Unfortunately, you can't do all of these in one turn, you can only do one. So if they summon from hand, you can summon from hand. If they summon from deck, you can draw 2. If they summon from extra deck, you can non-targeting destroy one of the monsters special summon from the extra deck. So this card is a brick, and there's no two ways about it. This card is simply a brick. It doesn't have extraordinary ceiling, but it has extraordinarily synergy with our deck. It's a light spellcaster, so we can search it off of Arciela. It also naturally can summon itself in any single turn where our hand is playable because we always have access to a monster on field whose effects are negated because when the Sylvia or the Rusia come out, the effects are negated. So this card is perfectly synergistic with our deck, but it is a brick. And I used to play this in Runic White Forest because I wanted to draw 2 and draw into more Runic cards and be able to continue playing. It also helps you go into Synchro 12 plays, but I believe those are currently in the category of win more. So this card, I would say, is not garbage just because of how much synergy it has, but the B cards are cards that either you're playing them because there's some other super powerful card like Set Rotation that makes it worth it playing this card, but otherwise there's not really much of a reason to play it. Actually, maybe I should put Chorozo a little bit higher in that set. Nah, Chorozo's so garbage. So that's why Iris Sword Soul is here. Jura, I think, is probably pretty high in A tier. So this card is one of the new cards, and it's a generic level 11. Each time your opponent activates a card or effect, gain 300 life points when it resolves. Obviously, time card. Moving on, during your opponent's turn, quick effect. You can pay 1,500 life points and tribute this card, then activate one of these effects. Destroy all face-up monsters your opponent controls, or destroy all face-up spells and traps. It would be great if you could use this on your turn because you would have another way to go for OTKs. It's unfortunate that you can only do it on your opponent's turn, but this card is such a strong type of interaction that I feel like it's worth considering. I feel like you probably fit this into your main deck if you're playing pure. Again, it's not mandatory and you don't have to play it, but it's a very strong card and there are very few things that compete for your slots with it. So I feel like this probably sits towards the top end of A tier. I also then want to put Psychic End Punisher somewhere else up here. So Psychic End Punisher is a card that is not really played very often, but it's also a generic level 11 synchro. So while your life points are less than or equal to your opponent's, this synchro summon card is unaffected by your opponent's activated effects. It's pretty decent as a boss monster. Once per turn, you can pay 1,000 life points, target a monster you control, and a card your opponent controls, banish them. Very unfortunate that this is both not a quick effect and also we have to target a monster we control. But, you know, being able to banish, okay, decent option. At the start of the battle phase, you can make this card gain attack equal to the difference between your life points and your opponent's. So, obviously, we pay a lot of life points, which means that this becomes a boss monster. So I feel like this is a pretty strong card, and you could even argue that it is part of a game plan for OTKing if you're actually intending to make this. Like, your game plan is you want Witch and Sylvie to go into this card. I feel like there's a much stronger reason to play this over a lot of other cards because it's a game plan card. But it doesn't really work in any other scenario, so it's very specific, but I feel like I'd still probably put it very high up. Maybe you could say Drew is a bit more flexible, but Psychic End Punisher has a more specific game plan. So these cards are probably neck and neck, I would say. Legatia is a card that I would put in B tier. This is a pretty decent card. You get a pop and a draw. If you need another level 12 over Execute Dragon, I feel it's probably a good one to play, but I think this card is probably better than Legatia, generally speaking. Lulu Wallolith, I think... one of the coolest looking cards in all of Yu-Gi-Oh! But it's probably not good enough to play over Execute Dragon, and you don't really have space for more 12s. Morian is a card that probably sits at the very top of A tier. So this card, if we go over Morian, has garbage ceiling. Okay, target a face-up special summoned monster on the field, changes to face-down defense position. There are some pretty cool tricks with this, like we saw in feature matches on YCS. If your Diabelle Queen was negated, you can still use her effect and then chain this and book it, because booking is a very specific type of mechanic that will purge a lot of lingering floodgate effects. So even if the Veiler or the Imperm or whatever has resolved, and on a new chain you go Diabelle Queen, Chainlink 2 in response to whatever, Chainlink 3 Morian, book your own Diabelle Queen, it will purge that negation. And so this has a lot of utility. Because you have to target a special summon monster, that's unfortunate. It's not like your opponent can go normal summon Dormouse, you immediately book it. You can't do that. If you control level 5 or higher illusion monster while this is in your grave, you can set it. Super easy. That's great. Because this is a trap card, it means that we have another way to banish it to summon Vengeance, and then we can get this back because it's a Sinful Spoils card, so we can banish Wanted to put this back from our banish zone. So I feel like the ceiling on this card is so poor, but the utility is so broad because it's a trap and we can recycling or whatever, that this has to be at the top of A tier, and it's borderline mandatory, but maybe not exactly. Queen of Azumina is tying with Beware. Maybe it's slightly better than Beware for the worst card in the entire deck. In terms of the lore stuff, it's just the brick. There's no, if you want to play a lore deck, play it, but there's no competitive reason to justify this. More Regina is probably pretty somewhere in A tier, because you can recover from Nib. With this card, you can special summon your Diabelle Queen from grave. You can bring out your Azumina LZ, go into Chaos Angel, Light and Dark. This has a lot of flexible options. You can get a double pop pretty easily. I feel like, again, it's not mandatory, but it's so good that in a flexible deck, you could play it. Rusia is a card that I feel like is just not a good card, but you have to play it in certain types of builds where you need like 2/4s to go into a Granite to search for your nib, or there's some other 4 play. Like if you're playing like a Cheese Ryzeal version, which is not good, but just if you need a level 4 for something, if there's some reason you would need a 4, then you would play that, because you have to have another way to go into the thing you're trying to make. So, but the thing itself is not actually good. Then there's Saint. This card is probably situational, and the Floodgate is good when it is good, but making the card is a little bit difficult in some cases, or at least it's not as easy as if you just need a single material. So I feel like it's a situational card, but it's good when it's good. Scarlight is kind of a time card in a sense, but it's a situational time card. It also is a board clear type card, but I think that there are enough ways to clear boards that it's not needed, so you don't actually have to play that card. But still, the card itself is not bad, and you could include it in a game plan, I guess. Like, it's not a bad card, you just usually wouldn't play it. Scourge is situationally good, especially in a breaker format. You could have stuff like if they go Dark Ruler, negate your Diabell Queen, you allow it to resolve. Then when you actually want to negate something else, you tribute your Diabell Queen for Scourge to negate the new thing. You bring back Diabell Queen, which is a new card, so it's not negated and you can use the effect. So it has a lot of good application, but it's a side deck card, first of all, and it's probably only good in certain formats, so it would be a situational card. I think I have some duplicates here, so the Goat will go to the bottom, Scourge will go to the bottom. Sinful Spoils the White Forest is one of those cards that's not mandatory, but it's in almost every list that I probably have to put it here, probably over Morion as well. This card is really just flexible. It's a White Forest name, it's a Sinful Spoils name, and so that makes it great. The fusion to go into Chimera or Sol is decent. The extension from hand, like if your Stellar was interrupted and you special your Sylvie, is decent, but it's really an engine requirement. You don't want to draw this card, which is why it can't go into S tier, but it's flexible enough that it goes at the top. Okay, Morion, that's also a duplicate. Subversion, I think, is an excellent card. It's one of the best types of removal that exists in Yu-Gi-Oh! But it's not good going first. Best case scenario, it's a pitch or it's a Sinful Spoils material for a fuse, but I mean, so is almost anything else. But the type of removal is so good, and as a siding card or a one-of card that just fits your non-engine ratios, this is a really, really good card. Woes, I think, is probably one of the better cards for your side deck. And I only don't put it in situational because I think this is probably better than the alternatives like Aface and Scourge, in that it sits in the middle zone where it has a decent ceiling, not as good as Aface, but better than Scourge. And it's easier to set up, like you don't need a whole bunch of stuff for Scourge or Aface, but for this one you just need one other monster and then you can do the Synchro. So this is a very, very solid card for the side deck, I think. This card is... This one, Sanctification, is a continuous trap. So target a Diabell monster in your graveyard or banishment. Discard a card, and if you do special summon that monster, the discard is part of the effect, not the cost. Or target a face-up monster card in your spell and trap zone, special summon it. So the special summon from the spell and trap zone would be way better if you could summon from their zone, because that would work with your Doom Dragon or the Vengeance Dragon. So that's very, very unfortunate. I think this is probably better in a Diabell deck, but not in our deck. I don't think there's really a reason to play it. So I'm going to say that this card is probably super mid in our deck, but it could be good in another deck. The Chicken Game, I already put in, so that's a duplicate. Debtors is, I think, a situationally... Did I already talk about this one? Situationally good card. Because... if you are Dark Locked, you can summon out of turn, so you have a way to use Azamina out of turn, but then it doesn't protect you. It doesn't help you play through things because you have to wait. Yeah, I already used it. Okay, so moving on. Susurrus is a card that I don't like. So this one, I don't know why there's a glitch with me putting duplicates in there. Target an illusion or spellcaster monster you control, return the face-up monster to the hand or extra deck, then special summon an illusion or spellcaster from your grave or banishment. And it can also reset itself. So this can be useful in particular types of game plans where like you're okay with your Diabell going to the grave. You have ways to play out of turn where you can bring back your Sylvie, bounce the Sylvie to hand, which will be follow-up, bring out your Diabell from grave and still have it as a boss monster. So the actual effect, I think, is good, and it's like, you know, worth considering in a game plan, but I think it's a situational type card where you have to be like in a format where you're expecting to have your board wiped often, and it's still an engine requirement. You don't really want to draw it because the best case scenario is you reset it for free, but so does everything else that's good that we would play. For Subdual, This is often good for summoning the Sin Keeper, and I won't talk about these too much because this is very, very specific for metas where like quick play spells are good. Like when Tenpai was good, I used the side subjewel for the Sin Keeper to bring out Sin Keeper, and they can't use Sangen Kaimin. And I don't really know if there's a realistic way to search this card because the Filia can only search level 8 or higher Diabels. I don't know if there's a realistic way to search this. If someone else knows of a way to do it, let me know, because this is an illusion, not a light spellcaster, and then I would definitely bump this up. But I think right now, this card is like a situational card with Sin Keeper for very specific metas, but otherwise you would never play them. I already covered Chorozo, I already covered Guardian Chimera, I already covered Poplar, I already covered Psychic and Punisher, and Horus, and Azumina, and Legatia. Okay, SP is a card that not everyone is playing. I would probably put this a little bit high. I might even put these higher than most of these cards. I don't know. So obviously SP is amazing. It's very easy for us to make it and to clear something with it, but it is a dark card. So a lot of cases where we would want to make it, like later on to protect us from Nib Imperm Nib Veiler, which is not super common anyhow right now, we can't make it. But the card is good enough and flexible enough that I think it still would have to go into A tier. Sol is one of the cards that works very, very well with Sinful Spoils of the White Forest, especially in the Fiendsmith build, but I think I would still put it in A tier just because hard making it off of Hallowed to crack boards is very good, because you can Send, which is a good type of removal, and then it's half of a Light and Dark Chaos Angel, so I would never rate this low, even though it's not mandatory either. Thrust probably is up here because it works very well with our engine. Setting something like a Tails doesn't stop us from using it because we can send the Tails as cost. It resets itself. It's a new card. And so this like works with our engine. It also works with our non-engine. This is just an overall solid card. You could either main or side deck. Veiler is a card that I think is mostly just good because of the Arciela. It's not actually a great card. It just rewards us for drawing a good hand, so we're not punished if we draw a high ceiling hand where, okay, we're searching extenders we don't actually need because we're getting them anyhow. So this gives us an additional layer, and I think this is a very strong card in that specific use case. Okay, let's see. Is there anything here that is not a duplicate? No, I think these are all duplicates. Okay, so this is more or less my tier list for the tech cards. There may be some things I've forgotten, so let me know if there's anything that I have forgotten, or if any adjustments or things that you would change here. And that's basically all for now. If you want to join the Discord, feel free to do so and at me because I'm quite active there. If you want to subscribe, go ahead. If you don't, then don't.